Hello, and welcome back to the Geek on My Sleeve channel. This is Geek Out 107, Anima, Book 6 in the Arturian Archives by Dakota Krout and Dennis Vanderkerken. Yeah, it is a great addition. Dealt with a lot of time. Brought back some of the original cast, which was thoroughly enjoyable and exciting. And the ending is just such a cliffhanger, but the next one's already out, so I just need to continue on the series.
Yes, yes. We really got to see a lot of the things we had been asking of Dennis in this book. I think if we go back to a previous stream, like we were wanting to learn more about the Wisps, and we got that this book, right?
Though that's one thing that I wasn't 100% about, because Dungeon Eternium's Wisp says that he is older than Eternium himself, but in the original Divine Dungeon series, when Danny is asking Cal to go back to seek the origin of the Wisp,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was the origin. I thought Eternium, who is a dungeon eternal, was the origin of the Wisp, because also he was using the Wisp lure effect to bring in everything. Um, time, space, beings who live forever and enter into the heavenly realm. So I could have misinterpreted it. We did get a lot more lore and introspection into um, the wisp coloring and the
Mm-hmm.
core and their values, and it's similar to the definitions or descriptions we got for um, essence types, so to speak, or how they make things happen.
As always, Dennis Vanderkerken, we appreciate you joining us for these Geek Outs. Dennis says, a fun note about the ending. The first chapter of book 7 was supposed to be the last chapter of book 6. Editing forced us to move that around. It's also where you get the actual description of Anima.
I think I looked it up and it had something to do with like soul understanding.
And then Kara E, our local Divine Dungeon lore expert, says it may be that Aberon is from the original creator, while Eternium is the origin of the, quote, modern wisps of Danny's time.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
I could understand that, because they also mentioned that Dungeon Eternium is at the zenith or the top of Triple S, but he did not want to ascend to, heavenly as we know it, which may or may not be taking over for the nodes, which is the opposite of embodiment, which is the traditional S.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So the one other thing that kind of just like happened, but didn't like, I didn't feel like there was a direct, hey, this is happening, is I knew Dungeon Eternium had a big soul space and I knew that we were putting the different iterations into Dungeon Eternium and using that to decant our people and implement our system and so on and so forth. But there was never like Dungeon Eternium's awake. It was just like, oh, Eternium kicked out, you know, Arturian. It's just
Right.
it was a thing that happened. Yeah.
We really don't get Eternium's point of view. Um, but we talked about this a bit in, what was it? Lion's Lineage, the new Divine Dungeon series.
Yeah.
Oh, um, the like we take Cal for granted with just like how human he is. Um, and um, oh, so yeah, like the interactions with Eternium are going to be different, just like all dungeons are different. But it was nice to actually get to see us spend some more time in there. And I remember early on, huge fans of the Divine Dungeon series. As we mentioned it before, it was like one of our first pseudo lit RPGs, because it's not super hardcore lit RPG, but it's more of like a cultivation book. How that then transitioned into the Completionist Chronicles. I was so pumped when that came out, more of the quote traditional lit RPG, and to kind of get to see the bridge there. And it does a good job answering some of those questions where uh, part of some of my background is in computers and programming and so on and so forth. So like wondering how the jargon and the terminologies kind of transition over. It was fun to see like our Deverdash, our little gnome, and everything, how he just gets short into dev, and how he transitions from being a gnome into like the embodiment of mana, and turning into pylons, to just um, becoming dice. And the little
Well,
details and pieces, you're like, did we get to see any other dice around in the Completionist Chronicles, and kind of like more little nuggets to watch for when you go back and re-listen to it.
and
um
that's where I expected it to go in a different direction, but
okay.
it's interesting the way things have developed. And this one in particular, it literally has like the time span is astronomically different because the Divine Dungeon is a couple years at most,
Hmm.
and the Arturian archives, just like this one book, is millennia or several millennia and full iterations of worlds of testing things, and
Yeah, we go
yeah.
through what the equivalent of some like catastrophic extinction event, right, that knocks Cal offline there for a bit.
Or I wasn't talking about Meat Space. I was talking about Cal's Soul Space,
Right.
where he had the
Subjective
first
time.
iteration with our normal people, second iteration, third, fifth, 15th, while they're all asleep.
Yeah.
And, Henry's on his like 40th attempt at raising the humans to not be complete
And
beepity
that's
beeps.
kind of fun too, because like when we finish the first series, you're just like, oh my gosh, Henry just got powered up. He's now one of Cal's dungeon born, super awesome and powerful. And you get to the beginning of the Completionist Chronicles, and it's kind of like, why is all this stuff going on in the kingdom? And talk about, again, if I'm not sure if we did the disclaimer already, spoilers ahead. Safe to say, if we've covered it in a Geek Out, it's fair game. So we've gone all the way through Completionist Chronicles, the Divine Dungeon, a number of the other series. So like the pieces with the nobles, and how they keep causing problems even in the Completionist Chronicles timeline, getting to kind of see some of that as Henry tries to figure out leadership. because he was the prince until the end of the Divine Dungeon when the master goes through, kills everybody. Also, after reading Lion's Lineage, getting to see how the master kind of plays special treatment with Henry is going to be interesting to see how that
And
relationship
so
continues to progress, and the title that he conveniently keeps like sneaking in there, right? And why Uncle Tatum has so many more restrictions, it seems, than some of the other gods. You know, Cal trying to check him, even though he can't because, what's the terminology they use? Incarnate?
I
Kara, appreciate you always being on point with the stats for us. Kara says, by this point, approximately 102 years, 3 months, 4 days have passed, according to Chapter 4. Thank you for that.
yeah, that when I first read that, I wasn't sure if that was implemented at that's how much time he had until he ascended or became, incarnate
Mm,
in S rank, or if that was how much time had happened since he
yeah.
had done his initial bit, and then yeah.
Kara follows up, and that's not taking into account the time dilation in the soul space.
Yeah, and then
That's
each time he
outer
ranks
world
up,
time.
it goes faster. Yeah.
Right, right. Um, and that's all related to like we covered that in earlier books. Cal controlling um, the speed and how mages used to be able to like speed up and kind of like depending on their law and how high they are in the tower of ascension, move at different speeds.
And it's very unique that way. With our current iteration of Eternium, everybody gets an incarnate body, but instead of being based off of what they envision themselves to be as an embodiment of the law they're following, or so on and so forth, it references the numbers that are
Mm-hmm,
implemented, and that's and
mm-hmm,
that's where I enjoy the book, but I would have thought it would have gone in a completely different direction because at the end of Divine Dungeon, he pretty much says, "Hey, go through the dungeon, get your tokens. Whatever you get in a token, you get in the world." So I would have
right, right.
thought more of that would have happened, but we nipped that in the butt with um, the mages not being able to utilize their magic, so to speak, or their cultivation as they normally would.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're trying to figure out everything. Um, I would have thought it wouldn't have been a problem just because Cal is currently absorbing all the essence of the world. So it wouldn't be any hindrance to him other than having to be the router to send it from the world to through him to whoever it ended up at. Um,
Real
but as
quick,
he
I when the revelation came that like the divine dungeon could be part of like our actual timeline, um you know, a lot of series try to do that, but it always makes you wonder like, well, how does that work? You know, like we don't have magic. Like you know, cultivate, get into the fishy rank, et cetera, all these crazy monsters. But it explains it, and we get to see the lore, and you know, it's Cal sucking everything up. And just like,
and
go ahead.
for the next step, complete theory crafting here. Take notes.
Uh,
Um, so everybody's soul item they can bring out, like how Artorian can bring out his pillow and Brianna brings out her blade.
mhm.
Yeah, what happens when Cal does? Is that where he squishes the
Mm,
world as we know it and just
uh,
plops his world into place?
yeah. See, I think this is where We tend to line up on a lot of things that we like and dislike with the series. That's why we love always having other opposing views on. But like for me, this book was probably top for me of the series so far, just because I just love the world building and getting to see more of the magic behind the curtains. And this book just does it so well. Um, and that's not even talking about the crazy character development with Artorian. And, like the further they get up the path, and we even get it explained. I wish I pulled it out how the ascension process works, but more and more becoming the embodiment of your law, right? With him, it's love and going through all these regrets and challenges, um, and finally getting some of those questions answered, right? We got a lot of this foreshadowing earlier on where, like, oh, that was his Artorian before he was Artorian, previous iterations, right? That was my third life. That was my fourth life.
Yeah, I need
And
to
just
go
kind of like,
back and see how many are there during the first bonfire event. One part that stuck out to me that is probably nothing, but might be something.
uh,
Oh, during one of those trials where he's going back and reliving a regret, and he's talking about taking the cultivation pills and how, oh, he palms them or whatnot, and he's like, yeah, learning how to palm things is a good thing to have or whatever. That's what, at least that's what the scroll says. And for me, it just seemed odd. Like, that's what the scroll said. Like, what kind of scrolls are you reading? And is that possibly Xenocide's influence somehow? Because it
mm,
didn't really match up with being in a high powered estate and all the extra and other things. Not thinking that it necessarily is, but yeah.
yeah.
And
Um,
then,
Kara, again, always on point. In reference to the earlier discussion about mana, unable to use mana beyond what they already had because there was Cal between them and the nodes on the tower. However, as of chapter 24, he managed to find a way to act as a router, allowing access to their mana. And we get to see that at the very, very end of the Divine Dungeon where they can't get their mana back, right?
or yeah,
Um,
the very end of the Divine Dungeon, and then Book 5 kind of
appreciate it, Kara.
reiterates it.
Kara
Um,
says won't comment on Xenocide because spoilers. Yeah,
yeah, and he's very much the man behind the curtain for a lot of things, and
he's
there are a
all.
lot of questions that I have in regards to him because like
Mm-hmm,
he was end of Divine Dungeon, he was set. He was like, I've got the triple S ranked core to go into. I've got all this power. I've got all this chaos happening. I'm about to ascend into tier 4 and or into heavenly,
yeah,
and then Kier Nolson pops up, and yeah, stuff happens, but complete sidestep. I'm glad we got our boy Adam back. Like, he's currently in a core.
gosh, the feel goods, like no joke, this book is that emotional roller coaster, and just the feel goods of seeing the whole gang back together, including Adam,
Yep.
who, again, spoilers ahead for previous books we've covered, he dies,
Yeah, I think
right?
he dies towards the end of 4.
So, and Adam was our boy.
Yeah.
um, to get him, see him come back and be all epic and BA, you're just like, oh yeah,
Well, and that's where things get complicated because Adam was so full of celestial corruption, so to speak, that he,
mm-hmm,
yeah, he had some
mm-hmm,
funky circumstances, But the idea of the demon coming back, so to speak, and we don't know if demons, naturally were in this plane of existence or not, and then just
Very.
being able to pull them through, and then same thing with like elves being a thing, where elves weren't a naturally occurring race, and then they get into all of the acronyms of what they
I
were and how
love
they were
that.
things, and I wish I had it
Yeah.
to pull, but
Yeah.
I, is
Haven't
it,
haven't you
it
always wondered,
did we
like,
all start out as humans until we got so powerful we had to flex on people? Is that what really happened?
it's the base race, and then from there, you just pick which branch tree you want to go with and spec that way. Embody your ideals and your snootiness. Um, yeah. And we got to see some of our wood elves too, which was
Yeah.
fun.
Are there children or whatnot?
Hmm.
And that is another interesting fact. So when Eternium is complaining about Arturian, he's saying if he was just one tier lower, he could affect him. And as we know through Cal's Ascension, I think it's 6 before Acme. Maybe it's 6. Maybe it's 7. I can't remember. Anyway, so there's only a handful that are one tier below Acme, and then a third step down is where Dungeon Eternium is currently residing,
Okay.
and that's where Chaos, something in Discord are currently residing.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Appreciate it. Dennis says order and love are 720. Acme is 721.
Okay, so they're on the same tier, so you can't overpower it.
Yeah. And then White Thatch, always good to see you, buddy. Commented, love and madness are closely related.
Yeah, and
Um,
we kind of see that with Arturian and him going through his trials, where he does something similar that I do, where if I repress it, it doesn't exist.
uh,
But yeah,
but
comes back to
he
haunt you in time.
it does, and in a way, like, he kind of goes through his own little healing process of um like dealing with those regrets and kind of either making amends or coming to peace with it in some shape or form. Yeah, as Kara says, out of sight, out of mind.
Okay,
um
so Madness was number 7 on 720.
there we go. And again, like, I enjoy the stats, I enjoy understanding the magic behind the scenes. I don't want to be like overwhelmed and stat dumped with it, but it's really been fun going on the journey of just like kind of understanding the power levels of each of these laws and how they all interact, and getting to see like the progression and how they change, from fishy on up,
Yeah, but
and
now it's
then
all
how they
just
really have
becoming a
to
muddled
embody
mess.
their law, right? Like, we got to do it with glory, or love.
Well, the
Yeah.
thing that I'm confusingly interested about is currently the Chains of Chaos are acting as a sieve, so to speak. And so only people who are actively pulled through, such as the demons or Adam, are able to come into Cal's soul space. Adam was not an S ranker, but may have achieved S rank or some other semblance of it because he's going toe to
Mhm.
toe with something that is presumably high A and or S rank. and has had several things going on, but we also know S rankers can change between the different realms. So just like Ember was a shadow, for a little while there, I was afraid all our S rankers that were out in the real world just died. Um, but I don't think they did because they just went into a different plane of existence, so to speak.
Hmm.
And the only way I would see them dying is kind of sidestep in the reference to Stormlight Archives, where the Wisps there, or the Spren there, are the embodiment of thought or idea. So if you think of a chair, most people have a similar understanding or example of a chair. So that Spren, Wisp in this example, becomes an embodiment of that. But if the world dies and nobody has those views anymore and it doesn't exist, do the S rankers die? Or do they just hang out in a different plane of existence? Because if that Chains of Chaos wasn't there, I would assume they could all pop in and out at leisure because this is just a layer of existence of which is Cal's soul space.
Maybe Cal will get a firmware upgrade on his routerness with mana and be able to do it with all the other forms of energy eventually. Um, yeah. So Kara commented, learning and understanding what their laws represent, then working to embody every aspect of it, even if it is something you wouldn't think would be tied to that concept, which was a lot of fun. In regards to the Tower of Ascension, White Thatch, all of the other tiers only have 6 concepts. I would think that would cause some kind of imbalance.
They talked about it in previous books where it's Blighty when Blight is complaining about the tower and how
Mm,
he knows the guy who created the binding oaths where they say something and it binds to their soul. So I
yeah.
guess that's where there could still be, if Dungeon Eternium is not the origin of Wisp and he's the current iteration of origins of Wisps. And yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there could be, because we still don't know the origin of the guy who created the words are powers, of which somehow got embodied by the people who do but do not exist.
Once we get current, it's going to be a lot of fun going back and
Yeah.
rereading them and drawing, it all together. Uh, Dennis Vanderkerken said, I haven't broken open summoning rules yet. More has to do what is being summoned from where and what power the summoner is, rather than what the static statistics of the summoned being might be. Yeah. Um,
So what you're saying is Men in Black, the cat has a necklace that has a pearl, which is the embodiment of a whole world. Um,
whole universe,
or universe that
full
we're currently
space.
residing in.
It's a dungeon core. You're saying the cat has a dungeon core?
Yeah, these
Yeah.
things.
Um, in reference to Pete's rant about what would happen to the spirits or the S rankers, Kara said, I think that they'd only die if the liminal/spirit energy was gobbled up and or the concept no longer existed or exists, which is
I
a
guess
good
that's
point.
true. There's
It's
still,
a good point.
or oh, I think it was one of our earlier conversations with Never Dash where he was talking about his essence is memory, and it was something basic
Mm.
like water and earth, where most people interpret that as mud essence, and that each of the laws or each of the combinations can be whatever your soul, so to speak, interprets it as, which is where, Arturian got the freebie where he was able to jump ranks to smack Cal around, but in reality, there's more to that law and there's more to the understanding of it. So he's now having to go back through his regrets.
He really lucked out with his deal with Cal, helping him on the Tower of Ascension. Dennis Vanderkerken, too long, didn't read. Dawn, S rank, summoning an imp, little nobody, versus some A ranker summoning Cthulhu. Still had a 80% chance of the imp winning. Makes sense. Yeah. White Thatch commented, it seems the universe itself actualization, and because each individual leaves a mark on others, ideas can be reconstructed.
You know what? That makes a lot of separate semblance of sense to where our current individuals are residing in essentially dungeon cores, but not really, but really. And when they take a nap, they go there. I could see something similar for the other embodied S rankers.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, appreciate the clarification, Kara. Deverash, Neverdash having the law of remembrance, same node as lightning, which is earth and wind, but some concepts share nodes.
Yeah.
Spot on. Um,
And I guess another random concept that didn't quite add up for me is, I think it's the end of book 4 where Artorian grabs the core that we now know as our spider in this
yes.
iteration, and she takes him to the Tower of Ascension. So it's like a physical place because she directly teleports to it and she's of teleportation. But then we run into instance here when Cal incarnates and the master is pretty much like, hey, I'm gonna go knock on the tower's door. So it's not a place, it's a mindset or a connection to the soul. Um, yeah. So yeah, yeah,
I was about to say, like, this whole book calls into question what is time and space and existence, as we're all pretty much existing in little seed cores anyway, just using the Wi-Fi to run around in these new bodies. So yeah, quick shameless plug. The Mountaindale Press Discord has a lot of the authors on there and is a great place to geek out.
yeah. They
Um,
go a lot deeper into a lot of these concepts and
yeah,
break it
yeah.
down and cover spoilers. And you have questions of how things are broken down, or you want to check out their oh causal connection information dump pages.
It's yeah. We live an amazing time. Being able to interact and geek out with the actual creators of these amazing worlds. Um, yeah, kid at a candy store. Uh, Dennis says different laws have different kinds of system access. to places the tower may or may not want you to go, like the tower itself. It doesn't like visitors that weren't invited.
But okay, so riddle me this. S, double S, triple S, heavenly. Our current assumption, or as I know it, is above triple S, heavenly is where, if you're heavenly, you reside in the node towers because you are the embodiment of the ideal. Each rank, as of S, double, triple, heavenly, can only have one. But to be an S rank is to embody the idea of the tower and of your node. So you're literally heavenly is always interacting and or being acted upon by every S ranker. But then you have causal connections between them, such as Arturian using his law to kick the butt of acceptance law. How does that work? So that's a heavenly Arturian's law kicking the butt of another heavenly, which may or not had S rankers that have their envision of embodiment that they are. Did we break people? I don't know. I'm confused. There's too many potentials.
Yeah, love going down the rabbit hole. Carr comments also the universe being a mental construct and not materialism is actually a scientific theory and potentially be called solipsism. So yeah.
So kind of like the Matrix.
Um, love how busy the chat has been. So many fun characters we get to interact with in this book, which is something I've come to appreciate with the series. Like the Divine Dungeon series, we pretty much have primarily just, well, I guess we still stick with it here, but we just get so much more interaction. Where in the Divine Dungeon, it's pretty much like Cal and Dale, right? There are 2 point of views. And at this point in the series, even though we pretty much hang out with Arturian, we still get to interact and see so many of our other favorite characters from the series, like Uncle Tatum, Minya. We haven't touched on it, but Dale is finally
I
back
was
and
glad
walking
he
around.
came back. I wish he got more spotlight. I assume he does in the continuations because in the Completionist Chronicles, we do find the original technique that in book 5 of the Divine Dungeon, Cal creates a spell technique for
I love how they
Dale,
break that down. Yeah.
and then
Spell
yeah,
out the runes.
yeah.
It makes so much sense, and I love it because it bridges that fantasy to um the video game mechanics. It's something we gone on about with other series. Like sometimes they actually explain it all or help you piece it together, and then others are just like nanobots.
Well, and that's where I like I'm glad they're putting it together and they're piecing it. But at the same time, I envisioned it completely different. I envisioned Cal doing something similar to the world that he knew and a bunch of epic and cool stuff happening. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, when he connects to the computer of, potentially Elon Musk and learns about all this game theory, he's like, you know what? That's amazing. Let me implement this. That's not how it
Hmm.
happened. Apparently, Cal developed it first and we're all behind the ball. But yeah,
Yeah. Um, so love having our lore experts in the chat. White Thatch asked, "What floor is knowledge on?" Dennis Vanderkerken, knowledge as a law is on floor 42, in reference to, what was it, 720, 721 floors. And then again, Dennis Vanderkerken, clarity, solipsism is the view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. White Thatch, you were closer to the mark with your universe as self-actualization dart throw. Yeah. And then White Thatch, I love all these series because even with so many characters, by the time I'm like, what happened to X? Boom, more story about them. Yeah, it's nice to see the nods and the tributes, and just our boy Celestial Spirit coming in to fight with this demon while Artorian has to go off and do all this other stuff. Though we do miss some sections, get a couple time hops, right? Because after Artorian goes
Yeah,
with his
and that's what
trial.
Divine Dungeon does really well, where Divine Dungeon is pretty quick on everything. And for example, Dungeon Madness, when all the spores get out because the spotter gills, like, we didn't see any of that. He literally toppled most of the world in one fell swoop, and we didn't get to see most of it. We got a nod
Oops.
to it throughout our Arturian archive earlier.
Yeah.
We now are going through Lion's Lineage, where we'll get to see the downfall and the interplay there.
I'm so glad we did that book before this one, because the little things, like, without it, you really wouldn't appreciate the fact that the master, aka Uncle Tatum,
Oh, they give him another
aka,
name in this one. I didn't grab it, but I recognize it when Madame Chandra is like, "Oh, blah blah blah, just kidding, Tatum."
it was fun to see her transition too, right? Because
I
like when we first meet
so
her, she's grandma in the pleasure house, who threw down with Frank and the master, and like
or
all.
she's got to have a great origin story, because she technically is an Amazonian, because
Mhm,
she's the one who frees or teaches a male how to cultivate,
mhm.
but then she left and resides in either the Lion and or Phoenix Kingdom, because that's where
But
Hans takes them to go to the pleasure house,
yes, yes. But then
but
like
ended
we
up teaching Frank throughout the guild. Yeah, she's in everything.
Yeah, yeah. Um Dennis, with Ramset, the master, Uncle Tatum, Aussie.
Or
Um,
I like the sad potato. Was that actually one?
uh,
Or yeah,
Sad
Ramsed. That's the one that
Ramset.
we get introduced in this one. So it's funny because I just barely caught at the end of the Divine Dungeon 5 where they call him Akal Tatum or Akal Tatum, however you pronounce it. And then I
Mm-hmm.
realized it in the Completionist Chronicles. I was like, oh, that's who that is. But at the very
Yeah,
beginning of Arturian Archives, it essentially does the same thing, where it's like, I need to re-embody myself, and I need to
yeah,
um yeah, I need to re-embody myself and get a new name.
yeah, yeah. Um, all good.
Oh,
Well,
okay. Apparently, Sad Potato is further
I
along
was
the
about to
way.
say, sad potato. It's all good. Um, but yeah. And if you just go from the Divine Dungeon like we did, reading in publication order, to the Completionist Chronicles, uh, like we're still new to the masters on our side trying to solve the problem, right? Like he was the final boss, he was like our Frieza, preaching, I'm going to burn the world to ashes, to like, oh my gosh, like you're going to help save us.
Well, and that's another thing that just like it's all a matter of perspective because he's the one who gets the prologue and I think like the first 3 books, and we think of him
Mm-hmm.
as a bad guy. And then he gets like his Day in the Light book 4, and it's like, no, I was trying to unite the world and make a better place. And then we get the, world ending reiteration in Kale's space in
Mm-hmm.
between Divine Dungeon Completionist Chronicles, and he's pretty much
Mm-hmm.
like, nope, I'm done. Have fun. I'll be here if you need me.
We learned that he might be a bad guy, but he's not a bad guy, as they say in Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Such a fun series. I'm glad that we have another 3 books to go before we're current, and it sounds like book 10 and
Well,
11 are pretty close.
and so a lot of like the staples or the things that we know from the Completionist Chronicles have already somewhat been addressed because we know Madame Chandra is a reason we have that high level forested area, and
And
also
why she likes the
why
Wolfmen
the
so much
Wolfmen
more,
have the
right? You're like,
greenhouse
wait,
and
what?
all
Like
those
she was a
additional
human.
perks. We haven't exactly had our falling out with oh the head of the Wolfmen. I can't think of his name, and Henry.
Mm-hmm.
We did come to terms with the Lion Kingdom and the Phoenix Kingdom continuing several iterations of being separate, but
Mm-hmm.
then they come to one and become the Griffin Kingdom, which makes sense and is where we end up in the Completionist Chronicles. So
Mm-hmm.
we're closer to figuring out that gap. We're currently still trying to figure out the Bifrost. We did get a nod to it or a mention from Deverash. Uh, yeah, using that for teleportation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're getting little hints into potential deity scenarios. Though that makes me wonder throughout the Divine Dungeon series, are the gods or the divinity that comes about the actual divinity or heavenly of the tower or not? Because that's why he wants them to become divinity. That way he can, control some of it. But what is the Divine Dungeons divinity? Or Aiden, thank you, leader of the Wolfmen.
Is Aiden, who we get to see. Um, it's not book 1 in Completionist Chronicles, right? It's book 2 that we get to see our boy Aiden.
I
And the hidden title that because I remember we were asking about that in the Geek Out, like, how did this happen? How is Joe
well,
able to
how did
res
yeah.
Henry? And like we get
I
the explanation of the title and Uncle Tatum conveniently sneaking it in there.
Well, he didn't get
Uh,
away with it that time.
no, he got put in timeout by the system.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's fun seeing how like that kind developed and the rules and the method to Cal's madness as he goes through and explains all the iterations and why he chose to have like a deity route, and that he's going to have to let people who are bad people become deities as well, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. Gosh, I really want to go back to the Completionist Chronicles next and binge on
I
that.
need to just to see like what potentials are going to come about, but even still like we're only on the eye of ritual.
Yeah.
So
What?
there's a lot of potential. I guess I also, because initially in the Completionist Chronicles, we think that NPCs die and they're dead, but we know that's not how it actually is by the point we're at in the Completionist Chronicles now, and it makes sense being a time penalty or some other iteration of due to just everything
Yeah.
else.
Something else that we kind of got more clarity on in this book was uh, we noticed that later on, when we go to the next plane of existence, the elves and the dwarves, they keep like respawning, but their memories kind of reset.
Yeah, until
And
they reach a similar power level to get them back.
yeah, and we saw that there's like burnout from these people after they go through so many iterations, right? Like we see it with Minya, who
Yeah,
we find out is who in the Completionist Chronicles. Spoiler, spoiler, are odds and ends.
yeah.
We have Joe pretty much like getting his mom a job at like
I
our
I
lead priest of the cult of Cal.
I
You
wasn't
know,
100% on if that was her or
uh,
not.
that's the way
I
I
felt
took
like
it.
that was the direct interpretation, but then again, she was
Gosh,
like, "Oh, I was an archer, then I was an arcane loot lord, and then I was these other things," and I was like,
she got to
"Okay, I
play the
guess she was
system
that because
though.
she was a treasure hunter beforehand in the Divine Dungeon
Oh,
series, and
oh,
then she
go on.
was loot lord for figuring everything out and doing the stuff. And okay, yeah, that one
Yeah,
slots.
yeah.
Um,
Gosh, started from the
so
bottom.
White
Originally,
Thatch here, the system was the system Eternium or Cal. In the Completionist Chronicles, they're in Eternium, but the Sir something altruistic, a lexicon is the system. So, and that
aka
was another thing
Cal.
that gets explained here.
Yeah. Kara says it is confirmed in chapter 22 of Anima that she does start the odds and ends.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't forget about the younger version of her. She started out the bottom as a prostitute propositioning Dale and, um, went to cult leader, went to operator of the moon, went to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Appreciate it. Kara says system created by Cal, aka Certified Altruistic Lexicon, and is implemented in an ordinary fashion by Eternium.
Yeah.
With our gnome, aka Dev, part of the process and the system and the background, helping it all. It's going to be fun going back through the Completionist Chronicles and like listening now, knowing that like, gosh, so something Pete and I have been toying with for 2022, and I think it was actually White Thatch that suggested it, is doing like a recap of a whole series up to the point. If you guys think that'd be something you'd like to see, hit us up on Discord, let us know. But pretty much now that we know what we know, going back through the Completionist Chronicles
Or
and doing a rundown, because like we get to see some of
yeah.
those pieces, right? Like the administrator versus the system versus, like that little dice rolling around. Um, yeah, appreciate it, Dennis. Big yes
I was
on the
gonna say,
recap
yeah,
plus Excel
definitely
Street. That's
gonna
that's what
take
we're
some
toying
getting
with, because
dialed in.
we try our best to get through this book each book a couple times in a week and do a deep dive, like to really have fun and do that deep recap. Might be a couple weeks of playing in Excel and hitting Kara up on Discord, being like, "Hey, can we get those notes?" But yeah, the rereadability in this series, so much fun. Love
Though
the
a couple
universe.
things I was disappointed haven't been displayed yet is the people who came in with the tokens from Divine Dungeon. We haven't seen them be able to utilize them, though we understand it's not the
Well,
final iteration.
yeah, we know Artorian has them. Like he spent some of them.
Yeah, yeah. So that hasn't fully come about, and then oh, I just lost it. Oh, Madame Chandra and Tatum haven't had their sit down origin story thing
Yeah.
because we know they want to. I secretly feel that the master is going to get his own origin story book series, so I'm not too upset. But yeah,
Uh, Kara says there are instances where system notifications are signed off as Cal. Also, one of them of quote A. I'm sure there is likely a team that does them. And
or
we get to
yeah,
see our team kind of
initially
getting built. Go
that
ahead.
was my question when Joe actually gets one to work in his favor and it's signed off administrator, or when the bearded dwarf with the nanobots, can't think of his name. Anyway, when he's screaming at the thunderclaps in the sky, and he's like, "Oh, is it the
Oh,
rock
yeah,
or is
yeah.
it the
Yeah.
administrator this time?"
But we see that
Havoc. Thank you.
Artorian loses his administrator title in this book, right?
He does, but he doesn't because he renounces it. It doesn't actually go into effect because Cal isn't alive or awake or whatever, so to speak. But then they all say, "Hey, you suck at this, but you would be good in Eternium." So they pretty much, yes, he does become the
Mm,
administrator in Eternium because he
okay.
does good with the peoples and the nuances, but he did
And
bad
breaking
with
stuff, right?
them. Yeah, yeah.
Finding
So
his way
it
around.
it was a yeah, they took it away, but then they also said, "Hey, you'd be really good at this." So they re-implemented him as potential Eternium thing.
What
Though
you think?
I'm still I know it's the end of the book and it should be answered or more to come in the next one, but I what like I don't under yeah, the ending where Cal goes offline more or less and we get all these light beams that are through it and they're like, "Oh, it had to be something from the physical world," where my understanding is he's at the bottom of the ocean in a pit full of poop. Like unless it's the backlash of all of his runes canceling out and, exploding because there's nothing yeah. I could see that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so we always have to ask it, Pete. Was there enough combat for you in this book?
I the combat wasn't really there because it was more reiterations or just other stuff happening because when we went to visit Odin I expected combat when we were talking about Marie, Henry and Odin. I thought there was going to be they're falling out or combat, and that didn't happen. when we went to figure out stuff with Brianna, the
Mm-hmm.
dark elf. I expected combat, and it was just a
We
poison cloud. And then,
we got
oh,
some.
Zilia
They
just
were they
popped
were
up and
quick.
stole stuff. Like,
Yeah. Like we had some minor skirmishes.
I
Nothing
mean,
like full scale.
it fits with the theme, but yeah, there's just so much additional world building, development, reiterations that it wasn't directly combat. It was more like the combat was almost a comic relief in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
instances for the duck biting the butt or Marie stabbing Arturian in the butt or it was yeah.
Kara says no comment on the combat and the devil went down to Georgia boss music battle scene.
I was gonna say the devil playing the music I thoroughly enjoyed. That was, like it always happens. Boss battles always have the epic fight
Mm-hmm.
music, and I truly enjoyed that moment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that it was a demon.
Yeah. Um, White Thatch says so humans came up with a metal that can drill through Cal's metal enclosure. Kara comments, that's the assumption, White Thatch. And Kara
Are
mentioned earlier, Cal was in crude oil and the core was found in oil rig getting crude oil.
okay. I guess that all checks out because the idea is that oil is essentially compressed plant base or, other things that have decomposed and compressed and, over a long period of time become oil, which is where Cal is residing because he had all the excrement and whatnot there to discourage anyone from wanting to come there. And
This is a good point too. You didn't touch on the Dennis ask, was this the book with the Liger mouth cannon? Because we
yeah,
do get
yeah,
to see
we did
him
get that, and I
as
totally thought of Zoids, but
uh,
I yeah, but that one was I don't know. He felt a little. It was still a comic relief moment because he was like, "Oh, I've got all these powers. Oh, how do I do stuff in Eternium? Oh, I just use names." So it was a comic relief of getting the saplings entered into the forum and then being able to speak across it. And then he
mhm,
kind of went all out and did everything. And then I enjoy. It was the combat was comic relief, which is an odd direction. Kind of the same
yeah.
thing with Volterra, our other awakened. That he's biting Arturian, and it's just yeah.
Hey Pete, Dennis confirmed Zoids was the reference.
Okay.
So yeah, so much fun. Um, so some talk in the chat that I'm absolutely loving. White Thatch asks, "Hey Dennis, I understand if you can't comment, but is there any talks about any TV or movie adaptations?" Kara commented at anime series slash OVA would be great. Um,
Or what is Divine Dungeon Extended Universe?
yeah, DDEU.
Yeah.
And then Dennis says that's all Dakota's playbook. So we can neither confirm nor deny.
And just
But
because we do not know these things, I will say that specifically the something full murder hobo is a separate entity and is designed to be a separate thing. Now, why would that be? Maybe he wants to allow possible others to interpret his stuff. Maybe it's going to be a completely separate, continuation of other and or explicit worlds. Like
It,
I think it could totally be connected just from the simple fact of slipping through the different spaces and the reference of don't be a reductionist, which that's our second tier that our main boy Joe gets in the Completionist Chronicles. But that was I have confirmation that was a subtle nod, and that is not in fact a direct reference.
so White Thatch, any references to Dot Hack, to any books that I might have missed? I love how like this corner of
I
the
need to
internet is
go back and watch those. It's been
our
forever, and I think they came out with a couple.
it's a classic. Like the intro to LitRPG back in the day. Uh, Dennis says Nexozoid reference, Liger Panzer version question mark, tons of light missiles question mark, yes question, thoughts question, other fun Liger version armaments for book 12. I got the room.
Or
Uh,
so, I guess before we go that way, like I'm
yes,
all about the
please.
Zoids. I'm excited to see it just because a lot of the current Eternium things are playing, or sorry, current Completionist Chronicle things are playing in their role, so to speak. Like you
Hmm.
have the traditional, heavily armored frontline wolfmen, and then you had the shaman wolfmen that are acting like shamans, and then you go and it gets a little more intricate as we get to through the Bifrost to the dwarf and the elf section. The one thing that I want explained is Endgame, the blob that we end up taking out, and that ends up we utilize the essence of
Mm,
Endgame to absolutely murk and wreck everybody over and over and over again with our ritual. Like, I, yeah.
yeah.
Is Endgame that black goop that was seeping through from the demons and the transitions? Is it a amalgamation of Eternium's law of equal opportunity explosions? Um, yeah, I'm curious
Yeah.
about that one. Like we've got the why there's a high level plant area. We've got, why Marie and Henry are, together and doing the kingdom as one. We got what the Bifrost are. Oh yeah, yeah, sorry. Correction. Yep, you're right there, Dennis. Not end game, but game over. Yes.
Yeah. Um, yeah.
But Zoids.
I, Zoids was like one of my first animes and
I was gonna
absolutely
say it's been
loved
a
the
minute.
tribute to it. Back in the day when Toonami got us into uh, anime and all its
Or
goodness,
or so
GDZ.
I'm excited about that too, but in Divine Dungeon, before we got to where we are, Al got a lot of knowledge. He got a lot of knowledge from the people's infernal dungeon, um, and all the runes and everything there. We've got Occultatum, or the Master, who has all the rune knowledge, and then we got all of the knowledge from Eternium himself, which he can freely implement at any time throughout the Completionist Chronicles. So I guess we don't need a direct reference in Arturian archives.
So Dennis followed up after the clarification on game over, says AA9 at the end. Got it in there.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
9 just dropped, and that's that's one of the reasons why I think I'm just falling in love with this series so much, is because it's our lore. It's literally our world building book, and being the suckers for the world building and understanding all the background, which I know, like, it just goes to show how much we enjoy this series, that even Peter can get into the lore and the world building books, because he's, as he said on previous streams, like, he doesn't like book twos and trilogies because it takes so much time, like getting into the politics and the backstory and da 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 da. Is like, give me my epic, awesome combat and my um oh our yeah,
Yeah,
Liger mouth
combats
cannon.
and fight scenes.
Yeah, light missiles, all that good stuff. Um, all right. So Dennis says AA question 1 has several with both hands. Best
Or
fight.
hosts.
Both hosts. Sorry. Thank you. Best fight moment, favorite / opinion. So favorite
I
fight moment or best fight moment.
so it would either be Brianna, the elf or dark elf at her wit's end, going all out on Arturian, or it would be the Liger, Zoid moment.
I appreciate how she pretty much admits that she was hangry and just needed to take a nap.
Yeah.
And everything's fine after that. Like, I was like worried for a moment, like, oh no, like, is this really going to be a thing, or is this not? Um, yeah, and I was kind of anxious about that too, seeing how that all was going to go down between Artorian and Brianna. Um, gosh, trying to think, my favorite fight scene for this book. There were several little fun ones that I enjoyed.
I
Um,
I guess
I'm I'm with
the
you on his
Adam one.
chosens, like his two new chosens, like when he
I mean,
adopts
only
the
one of
new
them got in a
dino.
fight, right?
Say what?
Only the Spider Queen kind of got in a fight where she was messing up the Dark Elves.
Oh, I meant with Artorian when he got one of the two new chosens for the book. Apologies, awful with names, but like our lion cub, who then gets to have his own little life and his domo and everything right there, and we get to hang out with him as he takes on the boar. That whole fight scene, as Artorian's going and kind of like learning the powers and figuring things out. And then when he comes back before he fights Brianna and bonds with the
Oh,
dinosaur,
Volterra.
yeah, where then he turns around and like some other bigger predator was like about to come over, and he pretty much just like kamehamehas him, into another realm or plane of existence. Was just kind of, yeah, just the imagery of it all was a lot of fun. White Thatch says, I love this universe because it's being built across multiple authors and based on thought out world. I'm so tired of all the reimaging of the old stories. 100%, like, huge fan of collaboration series, especially when like these authors can get out as many books as they do. Like in the extended DDEU, you get a couple books a year, which is just amazing. Um, Thank you, Kara, Voltica, the Dino, and Decorum, the Liger. Decorum is the one with the estate and takes on the hogs / boars. So, yeah.
Trying to think of all the Liger weapons. Or
Uh,
sorry, go ahead and
it's such a classic. Dennis, question 2, both hosts. Viewer comments in chat also welcomed, and it's a lot of fun. Like those of you catching this on the replay or in the archives, like the comments below, both Pete and I get a kick out of coming back and revisiting some of our old streams, and reading the comments, things we missed that other people point out. Anyway, the question is Liger weapons to use in book 12. Creative ideas welcome. I got a lot of leeway for combat lover fan service. Oh,
so
right
I'm
up your
trying to
alley.
remember. So we have the cannon out the mouth that we currently got. You've got
Mm-hmm.
the, I guess, like multiple missile thing. I think they also end up with almost like a oh, not dew claw. Like it's a
I was about to say the
lightsaber that
blades.
kind of
Yeah, I was
comes out
just
of their
thinking about
arm,
that. Like some two
or
little light
yeah, that come out the
blades coming out
side.
his sides. And it would kind of fit too, right? Like the domo, like I kind of get that vibe. So to have like the dual light blades, um, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. White Thatch says blade, missile, shield, vanilla with claw strike speed. So yeah, gosh, like
I mean, the boar kind of did something similar where it like sliced, but then it went further, kind of like what Brianna did. Um,
mm,
but it's not having a blade and then materializing a blade and then, still could be able to swipe further from it.
yeah. I could see the shield thing kind of just being tied into like the aura, right? Like I'm trying to think back to Zoids, it was 20 plus years ago. Maybe not that long, but yeah, I remember the blades on the sides and then like the shield coming up front with the aura. Um, I want to see Liger with phase cat tentacles. I forgot
Ooh.
about the tentacle cat.
I thought it was kind
Um,
of nodded to in this book with the giant duck and how it got multiple Hydra heads
yeah,
and how it
yeah,
was
the
phasing
goose.
between things and then became a giant metal duck.
Yeah, Dennis says I have nothing against non-Zoid theme requests if Pete
Oh,
is super into plasma explosion launchers. Oh
I
man,
so
oh man,
I would have to
combat fan service.
dedicate some time to amalgamating different things. Because a lot of the stuff just gets broken in the first arc of the Arturian archives, or I guess really book one of Divine Dungeon, where they're like, oh yeah, anybody can heal. Any essence can be used for anything because it's all awesome. And then same thing with the S rank incarnates, where they're like, oh yeah, so I can totally be a sword because I think I'm a sword.
Yeah.
And that's like okay, if I'm being brutally honest, what I want to see is weapons that change forms but also have abilities that they utilize. For example, in a quick and dirty version is in oh, I can't think of the game now. Anyway, it's sword, lance, and bow, and it's kind of like a rock paper scissors, but
Mm,
ramp it up to a rock paper scissors lizard Spock type arena. and have the combat where if they're swinging at you with a sword, you would switch to a different weapon to combat it, or chain whip something to bind it up, but then it could change into something else to combat it.
That would be pretty intense because they would have to know
Because I mean
multiple
that's pretty much
fighting
what they
styles,
can
right?
do anyway, where Arturian's just throwing out names and things happen, and due to
Oh, Kara says you're in book 9 territory with the weapon idea.
mm,
No further comment. Zip slip.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean they already like kind of do it, and we get to see. Yeah, it's all about preparation and anticipating what's happening.
White thatch, 4 armed gorillas with 2 cannons on its shoulders and dispenses grenades from its butt. Yeah.
You know, I think
Oh, Artorian does know multiple fighting styles. This
yeah,
is true.
yeah.
This is true. Um, yeah.
And I guess we get to see that with
Break out the pillow nunchucks.
his chosen, how they kind of embody a fighting style from where they're from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm?
So much goodness. Yeah, I was just about to comment on the no style. Carl says he knows Phoenix Kingdom, the Pantheon style from Dawn, the Liger style, and no style. So, yeah.
And then he also spent some time in the war, which is where he knows his bow from.
That's true.
Before he became an elder.
That's true.
And then I don't think that counts, but from the name is similar to a wizard name, except for it's not when he's a kid. I can't think of it.
Dennis is too good to us. Carl P, just give me your favorite methods of destruction. Mwahaha. We can slot it as an armament, and name it after you.
Aww.
Spend some time on it and get back to me in Discord. Love it. Love this community. Thank you. Thank you.
Or hold on, was it this book or was it another book? What book did I listen to before this? Anyway, the concept is everything has a counter. So yeah, it's
yeah. Question 3 for both of us: which character got the best character progression / development? So we already talked a bit about it, and I'm not going to count this as mine, but I really appreciate watching Artorian go through his A ranks, where like each level he has to deal with a regret or a failure of his, and we've talked about it before, but you know, like there are books that I come back to, and depending on where I am kind of in the universe, I read it and I get different things that I take away from it. So for him to be able to come back and look at some of those quote unquote failures, granted he gets some additional, you know, perspective on it, things that he didn't get to witness the first go through, but you know, just to kind of have to come to terms with those big key pillars and memories. And it really helps because like as he becomes like the embodiment of love, kind of makes you wonder, like, yeah, he's still human though, and we all have our flaws. So like, how did he kind of come to terms with those regrets and those hangups that we see earlier on?
Or well, and that's where for that direct one, it brings back the whole like when he's dealing with Ember initially, if you can't try anyway or make the
Yeah.
decision or do the decision that lets you sleep at night, but he's done it several times where he's not been able to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a good answer there, White Thatch, for progression being Bob. I yeah, that was a hard one to have Bob pass
Yeah.
away, but out of everyone, like, yeah, going from an amalgamation of all the different races and being the worst possible attributes to embodying the best possible traits, and then just being Bob Prime and having multiple iterations of yourself, continuously learning new knowledge and flying the Cal dungeon and becoming the one to fix and to change and to do all of that like that. That was some serious leveling and progression.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like main characters go, hmm.
So Kara chimed in. In their humble opinion, character growth ranking is Artorian, Dawn, Uncle Tatum, Decorum, Brianna. So yeah, rest in peace, Bob. Rest in peace, Bob. One that we haven't mentioned that I really enjoyed was Yuri, and getting to see our Ice Queen and just kind of like her development through this point. Like at the end of the book, she's actually a higher tier than Arturian is. Um, and we literally find her holding like her dead offspring, right? And that's when I want to say she's his second chosen. Is that right? Um,
Yes.
and just like the heartache, and like she was just so ready to be done with life, and like
I
by the end of this book, and we get to see the progression, right? She just starts to go and um yeah, Yuki. Um, so
I guess
yeah, that
really,
moment with
yeah.
her child, with Ember's quote unquote child, and to kind of like see her become more human, compassionate, at peace with everything. Um, when she's not busy flexing on Odin. So yeah.
Yeah, I think other than Arturian, it was mainly the Chosen that had the progression throughout it because, like
Mm-hmm.
Henry, he didn't really progress much because he was like, hey, I can't seem to figure this out. I thought I knew it, and now it's become something new. I've, tried to get my kingdom to work out, and it's not working. Same thing with Marie. And then, Brianna, it's pretty much a, hey, I'm all knowing, super powerful. And that was another thing that, like, I missed the transition somewhere because
Mm-hmm.
my understanding was in Divine Dungeon, she was supposed to protect and get everything from the Silverwood tree. Well, that's irrelevant because we're trapped in the soul space. And initially, they were the ones that were protecting the realm that harbored the Silverwood tree. But now she has her own spot. And another thing that didn't add up there is when Arturian visited in the previous book, she was like, "Oh, every elf is my chosen. We can mentally speak and we can communicate flawlessly through this and yada yada." But in this book, everyone was showing up physically and being like, "Hey, I've got these problems, I got these problems.
Mm-hmm. So, couple quick comments. Kara helped clarify her name is Yuki and her law is Canopsia. Hopefully, I got that right. And then in reference to Artorian's progression, Kara said not only that Carl, but also acknowledging his previous views on things isn't entirely correct. Example, whether or not someone is redeemable or if they are evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for the order of chosen, Halcyon, Yuki, Decorum, Voltica. So our spider. Oh, don't we also have the whale?
Oh yeah, spider, whale.
No, spider,
Crossley.
Yuki, whale, Decorum, Voltica. Question number 4 from the author, the man himself. Best new world lore that you learned of? So I definitely enjoyed learning about the Wisps.
The Wisp was
that was
good stuff.
awesome.
The fact that Dungeon Eternium wasn't the origin because his Wisp was older than the dungeon was himself. The fact that we have a lot or more than the 3 S rankers currently being stored because we have Occultatum, Dawn, Barry,
Yeah.
and more, which my assumption, if I could be so bold, is we have a Amazonian or the male version of an Amazonian. We have an elf, which is Dawn. Then we have a high elf, which is Brianna, which is Barry, and then the master ended up taking out the human S ranker, taking out the elf S or the dark elf S ranker, so that leaves a dwarf and wood elf. I don't know if we got any of the actual wood elves or not because that was a weird
No, we did.
phenomenon throughout Arturian archives because while Arturian is hanging out with the wood elves, they say, "Oh, we don't have any S rankers." But then when Arturian is talking to Blighty, he says, "Oh, they do have S rankers." So, don't know.
Kara said male version of Amazonian. You mean a slave, aka like the master was?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the for those listening and not following the chat, chosen order, Zillion, Halcyon, Yuki, Volteca.
Yeah, because
And
Decorum didn't actually become a chosen. He just ended up embodying or titling or slotting something to make him.
Yeah, Halcyon is the killer whale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clarity, probably butchering it. Canopsia, the forlorn atmosphere of a place that is usually bustling with people, but is now abandoned. Thank you, Dennis. Yeah. So I to go back to the previous question, really enjoying seeing how the worlds become connected and how the characters that we knew and love kind of transition and go to like the deity track, right? And getting to see Tom. Because like it was really big revelations to kind of like see those characters in the Completionist Chronicles, and just kind of like seeing how that transpired Go ahead, Pete.
So Hans and how he had to take his bards and smash them with his Assassin's Guild. And then throughout the Completionist Chronicles, we know that may have gone south, and the deity of bards actually hates bards, or is, if the deity of bards like you, actual bards don't like you. And so that is probably due to the assassins and or Hans being the comic relief of the majority of the scenarios. Yeah. So I got a kick out of that one.
Yeah. Kara commented, it's likely that the S rank wood elves are strictly tree form and don't take elven/humanoid forms.
I'm surprised that Madame Chandra didn't S rank.
Question 5 from Dennis. What Wisp information is missing that you need/want more of?
So we got a teaser here because currently a Dungeon Eternium waking up, like there was no transition. It was, hey, Eternium's awake, he's kicking out Arturian, and it was like, okay, cool, that's a thing.
Mhm.
But then when we pick up Dungeon Eternium out of the tree, we get attacked by the first Wisp. But then he has a support Wisp. But wait, Dungeon Eternium started off as a Earth-based dungeon, but obviously he's got a lot more because he has to have multiple to be as high as he is in the Tower of Ascension. Uh, how do you get support wisps? How BA do you have to be to get a support wisp? B,
Uh,
how did we not know that oh Danny was a multi affinity wisp, because initially she was a pink wisp, but then somehow she ended up becoming all of them. And why isn't Grace all of them? And now all of our people who are in essentially dungeon cores that house their soul and their body, when are they going to get wisps? Because all of the previous world iterations of dungeons decided to stay asleep until the world goes back to normal and they have a place that embodies or has their affinities to attach to. But it sounds like all of their wisps have become active. So are their wisps going to be repurposed, or are other people going to be able to get a job to become a wisp, just like Arturian's person that was supposed to stay on the wall didn't stay on the wall? I don't know. There's a lot of wisp potential, and as excited as I was for the wisp lore, it is only going to be relevant for if we have another origin story, because when Cal decants all the people and brings them back into the real world, it's supposed to be the golden age, so to speak.
You think a lot of the actual dungeons in Eternium are other dungeon cores
So I made that
with
comment when
with
we were
wisps?
going through Rexus. So in Rexus book 2.5 side quest in Completionist Chronicles,
Yeah.
Jackson is going through the dungeon, and there's this random eye that's in the middle of the dungeon that
Mm-hmm.
keeps looking at him. And someone made a comment that it will be revealed in X book. I don't feel like this was it. This might have been it, but that's where time and space and souls gets confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Carr says wisp color has more to do with who they match to mindset of the core rather than their affinities. Wind core flighty infernal perfectionists, and so on. I really appreciated the fact that we got more of the explanation about why Grace is the way she is, like why she hasn't quite aged yet, and the importance of that, and then getting to see the hierarchy of the Wisps. It was pretty cool. Yeah, Artorian is just such a fun character. Getting to see him kind of like work his magic with the quote silver tongue advisor Wisp and so on and so forth, as well as how he kind of plays with the mischievous wood elves. Question from Dennis, number 6, craving for things to see in next books. Mind you, 7, 8, 9 are the CC alpha test, which I'm super pumped and looking forward to getting to see Artorian kind of go over there and play with and break things.
I'm under the impression that Arturian is going to more so become full-time inside Eternium, as well as we are hopefully going to figure out why or what happened to Cal to make the world, him go offline and all these other things happen. Yeah, we have a giant fight on our hands from multiple directions where we've got to take out Barry. We've got to, redestroy the
I'm looking
demons
forward
as
to
we
seeing
know them.
him come back.
We need to see what other S rankers are involved. Because on one hand, the whole they were drilling for oil and then they hit Cal, they hurt Cal, but he's still bound in chains of chaos, so to speak, makes a lot of sense. But on the other hand, I thought maybe he ascended into, no, because he would have been smited. He ascended into his double S rank, which then the law was like, hey, you didn't uphold your end, you didn't let them live. So then the law was trying to smite him, but then since his law is higher, his defense stat let him, survive, but not really survive, and he was stunned for the duration. But I think the origin of Completionist Chronicles makes sense.
Yeah, I'm super pumped to see alpha testing over the next 3 books. Said it before on our streams, but like Dragonlance was like one of my first series that really got me into reading and just loved the whole like impact of the gods and the heroes and just kind of like that whole interaction, and just looking forward to getting to see like our favorite characters as they ascend to divinity status and how that all works. Really going to be fun seeing the other deities come to power, because we know that it's not going to be all nice guys. So it kind of makes you wonder, like, does that mean Barry's potentially going to become a god? Any of these other pains in the butt, getting to see them and just, yeah.
I want to see our original cast go through a Eternium, dungeon run, so to speak, because we know
we kind of did. We kind of did it this book, not a lot.
It was a single encounter. It was one that got me excited, got my hopes up, and then I was a little disappointed. But then we brought Dale back, and I was like, oh yeah, now it's on.
I
But
was
then
about to
he was
say,
just,
like,
a cuddle buddy for Minya, and then we brought
eh,
Adam back, and I was like, okay, full team assemble. Now it's really, really on. But then it
eh.
ended, and
Do you
I
want to
told
see more
myself I
Dale?
wouldn't go to the next one yet because I needed to have the stream of this one.
Do you want to see more Dale?
I think Dale is going to be a critical component. I foresee
Actually
additional
see him
separation of
like,
souls being a problem. Mainly
okay.
I, so yeah, it makes sense for as an incarnate you can have multiple, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, like people really haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if it is alpha testing, I see Arturian being primarily in Eternium,
Mm-hmm.
and then I see our original cast for Hans got overlooked for the deity thing, but we know he ends up being a deity, so I want to see his bard assassin, you know,
Yeah.
escalation. I want to see the stories of Thud for Tom. Yeah, I want to see why King Henry and or how King Henry and Marie do building up and being together, and why
Mm-hmm.
Odin, has a problem with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yes. So many thoughts, so many different directions. Um. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here.
Or yeah, I guess we're bouncing all over the place, but this one summon someone that has nothing to do with the current story to give perspective on the current state and setup of more advanced lore. I like that because in our understanding, Adam was able to be pulled out of the celestial summoning because of his extreme corruption that happens. But that's not to say that other ones couldn't have happened. And it's kind of odd because Arturian says initially that he was using his law of love and looking for them in that law, which would make sense. But then when he's retelling it to Occultatum, he says he was using celestial, which also makes sense because it's direct opposition of demon or infernal. But yeah, I could see summoning someone else, or honestly, that's how I figured we were going to get all the incarnates to come over to Cal's Soul Space. Because if they can't come in because of Chains of Chaos, and he can't go out due to Chains of Chaos, why not summon them?
Mm. All right. Dennis, AAC or AA6 question last, both hosts. Best Artorian or Adam moment of the book?
I like Adam for me had the one moment where he says his signature tagline, which I think was initially used by Craig, Dale's previous or other mentor. I don't know if he meant to hit that button. But yeah, yeah, the quote like, "What do you do if you only have one choice?"
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
if you have
Craig.
two choices, you have two. If you have three, you have three. How many do you have if you have one? And it's none.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like my favorite Arturian moment, it was when probably when he got to go out with Decorum and he was just trying a bunch of random attacks again, because that really felt like Arturian, because literally every time he gets a rank up or anytime he went and dealt with something that was difficult or above his power scale, his no fighting style really came true and came about, and that felt the truest to his nature.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was just excited to get to see him again. Like I was
Yeah, yeah,
cheesing from
yeah.
ear to ear
Like
first listen through.
it's okay because it's Dennis Vanderkerken versus Dakota Krout. Like Dakota Krout already had his one res for his series, so that was the
Uh,
thing. And his res was like a supercharged res, so went beyond the bounds of time and space. And not to say that something like that should happen, could happen. Currently, bounds and chains of chaos. Don't want to break too many things,
but why not?
but we do have a master of teleportation, which is to utilize the different essences and to use them to channel and travel along them. And now we're dealing with infernal, and so introduce, a chaos cultivator and or chaos into us teleporting all over the place. Whoops, accidentally opened up a portal to the outside world and
What?
shoved Barry through it.
Uh,
I don't know. That's a stretch.
yeah. Um,
Capricorn. I don't know who
Art-
that is. Or I'm drawing a blank.
Artorian had so many fun moments. Oh, Catafron.
Oh, Catafron. Okay. Now I remember Catafron being the older student who took him to his final trials as well as died to Blighty
Yeah, he
under
was part of the
the.
flashback too, which I thought was interesting. Like we get to see full circle
Yeah,
with all
because
those
he's
guys.
like, yeah, we get that first encounter where he's like, oh, you don't remember me. Oh, you're such a horrible student. And then it comes full circle to it now.
Yeah. Um hmm,
White Thatch, I hope not too much resurrection. It's kind of inevitable at this point because unless you get bobbed and your core shatters, you're always going to come back alive until Cal can let you back out.
yeah. Yeah.
I do not miss Cataphren, but if we're talking of Cataphren, I want more of elements and the laws that are in place in the current universe. Because Blighty is an element that is an embodiment of whatever, and I want that story because apparently we had 3 moons and then that Blighty was so freaking strong that he had to have a moon thrown on him and other stuff happened to bind him to that location of Sky Spear. So how, who, what, as well
Uh,
as that's only one element, and we know there's more out there, and they're like essentially what happens if a channel rips. What? So I know
uh,
there's more of those out there.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Or according to the Summoned Blight.
Dennis said, so you want more of Dale's old gang might have that covered, which
Okay.
is pretty exciting. Um, yeah, yeah. Book 6 was very satisfying in just like getting to see the old gang for a bit, as well as just, yeah, all that good stuff. Nothing like seeing the familiar faces while getting to learn more about the world. Um, White Thatch says, I like that the what ifs and you could use the travel dimension and send a character to an alt dimension where someone didn't die and use that to tell some backstories. Okay. Kara, more elementals who had more than 100% affinity for elements / elemental combos would be cool. I can see that.
Yeah, dropping enemies into another layer of existence is an interesting idea, and that might be our saving grace, except for not really. Now that I'm thinking about it, because when Cal incarnates, he gets dropped into Pi. Okay, sidestep. This book made me so hungry without mentioning food but once. You know, like every other chapter, it seemed, had a reference to pie. And then there was Madame Chandra and
this
all the mead and whatnot,
this
but
this coming
this
from a
book made
guy
me
who
hungry.
forgets to eat.
Yeah.
This book made him think about food.
Well, it's the subtle nuances of a word having multiple definitions and meanings, and you think about pie, but not that
Yeah.
kind of pie.
Yeah. Dennis asks, I did not understand / follow the question concerning essence channels and just what you wanted more of from it.
So with the essence channels, my understanding of how Blighty became Blighty, the embodiment or the element, was his essence channel ripped. And normally, when an essence channel rips, it consumes you, but for him, it didn't. I could be misremembering or misquoting it. Um, yeah. That was my understanding of how an element came to be.
Yeah.
Or yeah. Yeah, more people who had Adam's situation where his was essentially his celestial essence channel got overloaded and ripped, so to
The
speak,
corruption.
but it worked out for him that he got his glowing eyes and could see the truth of things.
So Dennis asks some more information on elementals and Path 2 rather than something concerning the essence channels themselves.
Yeah, for that comment about the elements, yes. More about elementals. But that brings up an interesting question of yeah, just in Cal's soul space, you can still use your essence. In Eternium, you can't. For the foreseeable future, they're going to become one, or progression in one is progression in another. But a lot of the traditional progression, as we know it from, the different rankings, F all the way to S, you need to know your essence types to be able to do things. And so I guess that's a bit confusing, where also when you go through the Tower of Ascension, how would you display that inside of Eternium? Because some of them, kind of like we talked about for the Completionist Chronicles, they hit a certain level and they gain back their memories. So that makes sense. They were previous iterations, and so that's why they can get their memories back and why they can progress and continue in the previous world. But for our new editions, who are of the world as we currently know it, how does that work?
Hmm. Hmm.
Also, Hans and Rose now have all their affinity channels open. I didn't really get to see that emphasized. That's okay. Ba ba ba.
Dennis said, I will get y'all whole chapters on effects and side effects on what having certain channels is like, or what having more channels than you're supposed to have is like. You know, by the end of this all, even if they don't release a official like tabletop or RPG type content for us, we'll have enough that we can go and do some of our own homebrew and just do a nice little campaign and play in the world with everything explained for us.
Or there's a downside to having everything unlocked. If you're not ready, it'll be in book 10 or 11. So, in the previous iteration of the world, the Divine Dungeon universe, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because if you don't have all the proper essence or whatever around you for all of your affinity channels, you
Mhm.
can't absorb things. Kind of like when Dale first tries to cultivate outside the dungeon and he has all of his channels open, he can't do it
Mhm.
because you need all of them working together. So I could see that hindering people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, this book was a lot of fun. Definitely enjoyed listening to it this week. Looking forward to the next phase. And it's nice how it's broken up, right? Like trilogy wise, you know, we just finished now the second trilogy, and the next 3 books is our alpha test of the Completionist Chronicles. I think I even saw, if you haven't picked up the series yet, you should have. But they've started releasing, I think it's trilogies for 1 credit on Audible, which is pretty exciting.
I'm pretty sure there's only 6. There's a traditional 4 for like earth, wind, fire, water, and then it's infernal and celestial for the other
Hmm.
2.
Yeah. Learn more in the future books.
Oh, Dennis
Um,
replied, Wait, that's not quite what I meant. The essence channels a person has access will always be the 6 planes closest to their home sphere: fire, earth, water, air, celestial, infernal, in Divine Dungeons case.
mm,
And wait until book 10.
yeah. Looks like we get more epic lore dump in book 10. Yeah. Yeah. Lots of fun. Lots of fun. Really appreciate everyone taking time to hang out with us Sunday night. Uh, I know Peter and I can't say it enough, but in a lot of ways, these are the highlights of our week. Getting to geek out with you guys, just unwind, go play in other worlds. Huge shout out to the author himself, Dennis Vanderkerken. Means the world to us that you make time to answer our questions and include us in the community and the dialogue. Um, Everyone go give Terror Floof a hard time on Mountaindale Press Discord. We'll do our best to link that below. And yeah, get to learn more about the extended Divine Dungeon universe.
So real quick, 10, 11, 12, or Dennis says 10, 11, 12 is answering a few thousand questions from Discord with story, plot, and combat. Very
Thank
nice.
you. Thank you.
So sidestep or back up to the different essences that we're speaking of here. More essences, types of essences, amalgamations of essences, but I bring it back to Divine Dungeon Book 1 when the Earth Affinity or whatever ends up healing the other guy, or when Arturian explains that any Essence channel can do anything, it's just the previous
Have to
construed or
believe hard
understood
enough.
notion of what it is. And we get to see that in Arturian Archives 1 when he's playing around with his different essence channels and he's, flighty and running around naked, or he's, acting pompous, or, doing his other things.
Yeah.
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 So anything can do anything. It's just how they go about it.
You just have to believe hard enough. And we believe in you guys. And yeah, only 2 more geek outs to go in 2021, Pete. We got
Did you math that right?
19th and 26th.
Wow. Hey, look at that.
For those of you who don't know, Pete is about to complete another cycle around the sun. So please hit him up and give him some birthday wishes Wednesday, and send him all the positive vibes. He's not the best at keeping track of that stuff. But yes,
Nope. I'm gonna
congratulations.
pull an Arturian. Yeah. How old am I? Really? Did
Just
that
do.
happen? When was I enchanted? Is this time accelerated or not? Um, so Dennis, for when do we expect to do Geek Out 7? Current understanding is we will get to an Arturian archive book once a month.
At
This
least.
took the slot of December. So yeah, that's our current agenda. But depending on other books, yeah, it's
The
it's
real question
once a
is,
month.
does that will book 10 be ready for our April Artorian slot? But yeah, gosh, I don't know if I'll be able to wait that long to jump into book 7. I might cheat, and we listen, some weeks we listen to a book a day, and we'll sneak in other books other than our geek outs, and then just listen to the geek out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. There we go. April. It would be sad if it takes that long, Dennis says. So good. We can keep going strong until then. But yeah. White Thatch says, Dennis, write faster so we can get 2 books a month for the geek outs. Yeah.
As much as I love it, we also have the Wolfman Warlock book 2, which has not
I'm looking
been
forward to that.
audibleized, and that might take up a slot for, I guess, Mountaindale Press, because we did do
We got
the
Ravenous.
hunt of what's
Is
that?
it Ravenous Mountaindale Press? Yeah.
It's not Divine Dungeon Extended Universe, but it's
Mm-hmm.
And then there's been a couple other series that have been released through Mountaindale that I've been tempted to check out.
Gosh, we just need more time to do these geek outs. But yeah, we appreciate you guys geeking out with us over these fun stories. What we have going on next week, Pete?
I don't know if I have these in the correct order. I can't remember. Hold on. Buttons.
I was about to say, I think Dungeon Crawler Carl is the following week.
Okay, so we have Awaken Online is next. Which this is one that has been recommended multiple times, slots into our LITRPG theme. I have not gone through it yet. I know they have several out, so I'm interested, curious. Do not have much to say in regards to the book.
I think White Thatch has even recommended this one to us.
Yeah.
I've heard people talk about this being like one of the originals, at least what a lot of people come into the lit RPG genre through. I think they even do some collabs with other authors, which is exciting. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we're finally going to get to see what all the hype is about. The real question is, will we be able to stop ourselves from continuing the series, or will it pull us in?
Well, so that's a whole separate line of thought where we've been trying to play nice with others and
Mhm.
to do a variety of books. But I would say you're wrong. I want
uh,
one series, I want all of it, because I marathon mode series like it's nobody's business.
uh,
But in a sidestep, Dennis said he will keep making books as so long as y'all will keep wanting them. Currently working on book 12 and have a small mountain of notes for 13, 14, 15. The Completionist Chronicles beta run. So much to do. I'm excited about the beta run.
I'm
That could be
excited
interesting.
about when it gets to the Completionist Chronicles, which we're already there in the Completionist Chronicles, and
Or,
getting to
well,
see the Wizard of
yeah, but
Oz.
my understanding is Joe had an opportunity to get into the beta run because it was still
Mm,
temporary. And
I
my
don't even
other
know if that was the
understanding
beta
is
run.
that
He
Wolfman
he was just
Warlocks was the
oh
beta
yeah.
run.
No. Warlocks was the actual release. It wasn't actually in beta
Oh, okay, yeah.
because Joe came into the game. I think it was like 2 weeks, which was the
Or
equivalent to a
Wolfman
month of the
Warlock
game
went
time,
in
or
before Sam went in before Joe did.
right. But Joe wasn't able to go in when it launched.
Correct.
Right. He came in
But
late.
for some reason I was thinking that when Joe was supposed to go in was before the actual launch because he was being so like government secret agent hush hush.
Answers the
Okay,
question for
so yeah.
us. Dennis says nobody from Completionist Chronicles shows up before AA16 at minimum. So
Okay.
we
So
get a lot more goodness.
and then after Awaken Online, Dungeon Crawler Carl. This one I have gone through. It is interesting and unique. Um, the idea is if Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy happened, where there is more to life and space and aliens than we know, they pop up and now we have to play by their rules. Except for instead of turning our planet into a giant highway, we were unable to um, file the correct paperwork, and now they're turning it into a dungeon attached to kind of a oh, may the odds ever be in your favor. What's that book?
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games vibe, where you have people to support you throughout your endeavors, but only financially, so to speak. It on top of and or stacked with a sentient cat. It is comical. It gets you. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it. It yeah, it was a nice change in pace. It's very whimsical, so to speak, where nothing is like a hard set rule because
The
things are
aliens
subject to
changed the
change
rules.
due to hot fixes or patches, and yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah. Another series that we kept seeing a lot of, and it's by one of our favorite groups, Sound Booth Theater. So they are a lot of fun, and we don't even hold it against them that they spelled Carl wrong. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, laugh out loud. Trying to think, like it's got some like slapstick comedy, but I don't really feel like the humor's crude at all. Um,
a
Maybe not. Am I misremembering? It's been a couple weeks since
I
I've gone
felt
through
like
it,
it
though it's been
aligned
fun.
with my being, but at the same time, it probably is not the norm. Um,
You
for
definitely are not the
example,
norm.
he's running around in his underwear, and that essentially becomes a feature because the AI has a foot fetish, and that's just a thing. He enjoys watching our main guy Carl, slay stuff with his feet. So you can't have pants because then you won't be able to see your feet.
uh,
Just it becomes a gimmick or a thing of it, and yeah, it's a thing.
it's
Uh,
a thing.
Couple comments backing up here. So Kara says, or Kara. Anyway, Awaken Online wasn't her cup of tea. It's very well written, good, just didn't hit the feels, puns, philosophy the same that Dakota and Dennis do in the Divine Dungeon Extended Universe. Okay. I definitely
We
need
do
more
enjoy our
puns,
puns. Yeah.
um, and philosophy and building.
And then yeah, Kara on the lore confirmed that Joe went into Eternium 2 weeks post launch.
Yeah, but then wasn't it closer to a month due to double time
Yep.
dilation?
Yep.
And Joe's not in book 15 because he didn't have room.
Yep. But Joe likely exists in AA16, but Dennis fully expects his attention to be elsewhere.
And that makes sense, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where he does really well because like Arturian was in the Divine Dungeon, but not a whole lot. So being able to, generate a whole lore backstory event from the, couple nods we got in the Divine Dungeon is what I expect to happen because like that is a small fraction of the potential.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you finally get to Completionist Chronicles, I don't expect you to be focusing on Completionist Chronicles. I expect you to be focusing on the expansions and the patch updates and decanting new people and, tweaking the things that Joe has broken. Yeah. Ba, ba, ba. Like that, I still want to see a crossover book with all the AI/gods of LITRPGs getting together and talking about their games. Interesting concept.
And then yeah, we appreciate you too, Dennis. It was good hanging out with y'all. He says, see you January for number 7. I suggest preparing notes. 8 and 9 are very integrated with their with their stepping stone. And then Dennis continues, also, yes, doubling down on wanting that full series review and Google Sheets for Excel goodness. I hunger for your findings and gasps of realization at some evil things I've secretly done. The foreshadowing in these books are so well done. Every time I go back and reread them, I catch something different, which is just, adds to the story.
Yeah, rereadability is definitely there for
Mm-hmm.
the Divine Dungeon extended universe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Alrighty.
Well, yeah. Thanks everybody for geeking out with us. I know we went long tonight, but it was a blast. Thanks for, the chat, questions. Really appreciate you guys. Hope everyone has an awesome holiday season over the next couple weeks. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks again, and hope to geek out with you here soon. Bye.
Bye.